On the 9th of June 1983, Roy Jenkins, David Owen, Bob McLennan, John Cartwright and myself were the only 5 SDP members of Parliament returned to the Commons from 28 SDP MPs in the previous Parliament. But, much to our surprise, in view of that result, there was, in addition, an SDP gain in Ross, Cromarty and Skye, which I've got to say sounded more like a shipping forecast to me than a parliamentary constituency. Yes, to our delight, we were joined by Charles Kennedy. Like the new members joining us over recent months, he was a tonic to the group and to our alliance with the Liberal Party. At 23, he was the baby of the House and therefore the darling of the press. His ready wit, his attractive personality, and his debating skill were an enormous asset to us, both in the media and in the Commons. With foresight and toughness, he fought for the merger between the SDP and the Liberal Party. He then went on to take over from myself as president of the merged party, and not long after that, as our leader of the Liberal Democrats. By any standards, Charles had a very successful life. But the tragedy is that despite all that he achieved, for us and for the country, he could almost certainly have done even more had he had the chance. For my wife and I, attending Charles's funeral earlier this year was one of the saddest experiences of our lives. The tragedy was felt widely by family and friends and people who didn't know Charles right across the spectrum, but nowhere more so than by his former wife, Sarah, and their son, Donald. Sarah is with us today, and many of us came to know her well as she supported Charles as leader of the party and his many other roles. Our hearts go out to them, and we hope the film we're about to see and the support from everyone at conference will help to make the pain more bearable. The film has been made by one of our members of staff, Rachel Clark, to whom we are very grateful. When it is over, I hope conference will feel it is appropriate to show their appreciation of Charles and his life by standing and giving 1 minute's standing ovation. Thank you.
There is no way in all conscience. My name's Charles Kennedy, and tonight I'm in charge. People of Britain, get used to it.
Everybody, all human beings are in some sense contradictory, but I just loved Charles's contrasts. He was very comfortable here in Westminster, served as an MP for so long, but he was also quite rightly seen by the public as a kind of ordinary, non-politician politician.
Well, Charles, give him some advice. Tell him what he's got to look out for. How does he approach all this?
Don't try and live Ashdown hours.
Like writers and poets who talked about who said, when young Lochidvar came out of the west of all the wild borders, his speed was the best. It sort of summed up Charles.
People outside the House, do they take you seriously in view of your age?
Well, you'd have to ask my constituency that, but 13,000 of them voted for me, and in an otherwise Tory landslide threw out a Tory government minister. I think that speaks for itself.
But we interviewed him, and having set aside 15 minutes of time for each candidate, he was so fascinating and so sophisticated about politics that we interviewed him for 45 minutes.
Have you got the heart for it?
Do I personally? Yes, most certainly. I mean, I'm in the business of politics, and just as we were watching that rather touching film, I thought about David Trippier losing. If you've got it in the blood, it's in the blood, and you keep going.
So, having listened to your speech, I think you should rethink your political position, which was a roundabout way of saying join the Liberal Party. Well, of course he didn't. He, later, when the SDP was formed, he joined that.
It took a lot of courage to stand up to somebody as strong and tough and domineering as David Owen was. But very quietly, I remember Mr. Kennedy got up, Charles, and said, I think it would be right to merge.
I am enjoying life. We're breaking the mould of British politics. That's great fun.
But I'm going to stand up above all else for social justice. We have to give voice to the disadvantaged and dispossessed, because those voices are not being heard by New Labour.
35,000 feet in the airline, Air India, and suddenly I had a tap on my shoulder. I looked back, Charles looked at me and said, I want to talk to you. I said, what can I do for you, Charles? He said, right, I have decided that I'm going to nominate you as a president of the party. I nearly fell over backwards. There was nowhere to escape from that height.
Well, for God's sake, on Europe, this is one that we believe in. This is one that is part of our DNA. This is what we should be passionate about. And if it makes us unpopular in certain quarters, let's be unpopular for what we care about and what we believe in and what defines us and what we think is best for our country.
But his dress sense, oh my goodness. Charles, you can't wear that polo neck. And the white socks have to go.
And I went round every friends meeting saying, I can see where I was born, I can see where I went to school, and I can see where I went to university. And I said this 2 or 3 times until I shared a platform with Charles. As I came to the end of this rather self-serving remark, said, perhaps that's why he now lives in Edinburgh.
Could I just point out, however, though, that I don't think the scoreline tells the whole story. There is a distinct shift, a swing that we're finding as we get towards the end of the campaign. I'm sure these headline figures are concealing what's really going on at this point.
You're right.
I admire above all else, apart from anybody who's a liberal, but I admire those who have their principles and stick to them. I admire even more if they have the courage to do so against opposition, and even more if they turned out to be right.
Today, across the world, the people are speaking, and the Prime Minister and the President have got to start listening. I do believe that the impact of war under these circumstances is bound to weaken the international coalition against terrorism itself, not least in the Muslim world. And the big fear that many of us have is that this is simply going to breed further generations of suicide bombers. I'm not persuaded by the case for war. The arguments have been contradictory and inconsistent. Go on, Ian, say it again. What? I was right. Wasn't I? I was right.
You were right. Yes.
Charles was a politician who talked the language of the people. He always used to say, as many of you will remember, I'm a fully paid up member of the human race. And he was.
And Charles and Willie were absolutely surrounded by media. And as we were walking down the street, the shopping area in Dunfermline, one lady shouted from a shop doorway, hiya Charles, we love you. And Charles, as quick as a flash, said, keep it quiet, the party's in enough trouble as it is.
Mr. Charles Kennedy!
Sure, the right honourable gentleman is delighted to be lauded in such enthusiastic fashion. Mr. Kennedy.
It's just like the old days, Mr. Speaker.
What more can I say? All you people were so lucky to have him.
Charles, you were the 23-year-old lad who came from 4th place to gain Roscommon in Skye. You were the 27-year-old who wowed the SDP conference, persuaded the SDP to merge with the Liberals. That's why we as a party exist today. You led us through the Iraq War and gave us our heart, you gave us principle, you gave us that position that brought so many people to us. and you led us during the campaign in 2005 where I gained my seat. I wouldn't be an MP without you. You're a hero before I met you, and you became a friend once I became a Member of Parliament. I will miss you massively. We will all miss you massively.
At any given point in this country, 55 million people, citizens, three people are given the chance of leading a British political party. 3 out of 55 million. And you've looked at me, and you've given me that chance, and all the responsibility that goes with it. Well, for me, it is personally the chance of a lifetime. And I think politically, for us, it's the chance of a generation. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I won't let you down. Let's go and make a success of it together. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, conference. If we didn't have other business, I'm sure that standing ovation would have carried on till the end of the day. He was truly loved, not just by us, but by the nation, and he'll be truly missed. Can I thank Lord Wigglesworth for a very moving tribute? And can I also thank Rachel Clark for a wonderful video? It was wonderful.